Thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to again address the Noosa Mining Conference, virtually at least. And my apologies, I can't be there in person, but I'm sure I will be at the next one. So I'm here to update you since I was last here in July on our progress at Bowen coking coal, and we've made considerable progress in that time, including starting up our second mine. As we move towards our goal of becoming a significant independent met coal producer based in Queensland. So as some of you have heard me say before, Bowen coking coal is fully focused on achieving our target of 5 million tonnes of ROM production by 2024. And to that end, we've had a big couple of years and a big 6 months, frankly. The Bluff Mine, we shipped our first coal in June of this year. Broadmeadow East pit we've opened as well up in the north. And that's now, we've now formally railed our first coal out of that. So our first 3 trains have gone. Our 4th train is on its way to the port shortly. So just briefly in terms of where we are in the basin, you'll see up in the north, Hillalong, Lenton, Burton, Broadmeadow East. That forms our Burton complex. We acquired these assets variously over the last 3 or 4 years, and from Peabody, New Hope, Rio Tinto, and we've pulled them together with the plan to use the centralised infrastructure that comes from the Burton operation that we're currently refurbishing. This is really the engine room of our operations, and all of this coal will go out primarily out of Dalrymple Bay Coal Terminal on the Goonyella line. With some potentially, we're looking at taking some up to Abbott Point as well. Just to the south of that is Isaac River. That's a sort of smallish met coal mine, but a very high quality met coal, and that's quite an important strategic asset to us. It sits right next to Daunia, and in between Daunia and Peabody's Moorvale South. So we expect approvals for that project to be in place by next year, and mining coal. Further south on the Blackwater line around Blackwater, which goes out of Gladstone, is the Bluff PCI mine, which we acquired late last year. And that's the first mine we brought into production. And then we have a series of development and exploration assets that sit behind that in the pipeline that I'll mention. So in summary, we've shipped our first coal out of Bluff, and we're now shipping our first coal out of Broadmeadow East. So we've turned 2 mines on in the last 6 months. The team is well established and I think well credentialed. We've between us operated more than 25 coal mines worldwide and opened 11 coal mines. As some of you know, my background starting Stanmore Coal in 2008 and listing that, and acquiring Isaac Plains. I left that in 2016 and came and joined Gerhard, who's formerly Exaro, and had built this business, Bowen Coking Coal. So we joined forces in 2018, and we've been growing it together ever since. Matt Lattimore sits on our board, coal marketing executive and coal mine owner, and Neville Snedden, who was on my original founding chairman at Stanmore. So he's also on the board. And below this we have Chief Financial Officer, Chief Operating Officer, and then some very experienced operating people. So if we just take a little look in the rear vision mirror, as I say, it's been a busy 18 months or 2 years. We acquired Broadmeadow East in September 2020 from Peabody. We've acquired the Burton mine from New Hope about a year later in August 2021. And December, we acquired the Bluff PCI mine. So all of those deals were struck at a time in the market when the prices were down, coal prices were down, and they were negotiated at those times. Coal prices started to come up sort of through September last year, and now we're turning them on in what's a very elevated coal price environment. So we think we bought them well. We haven't overpaid for them, and that's very much our mantra, is to try and acquire assets well that makes sense for us and are sort of synergistic with our existing operations. as I said, we mined our first coal at Bluff in April, and in July we mined our first coal at Broadmeadow East. And now we've railed at Broadmeadow East as well. So it's been a Herculean effort by the team to get this all going in a short space of time. And I'm very, very pleased, very proud that we've managed to get to this point, and we're now well and truly kind of heading into our ramp up into steady state phase. We also raised $85 million in equity capital recently, which has set us up very well for the future. So the Bluff Mine is a smaller operation. It's the first one we've opened. We opened that, as I said, shipped our first coal in June, mined in April, acquired it in December last year. So it was a very rapid startup. And to be honest, we did get a lot of wet weather through this process. We mobilised the crew in January, and then we got a lot of wet weather. But despite that, we've prevailed, and we've got our first coal out in June and our second boat out in August. And now we're rapidly getting towards steady state. And I've got a couple of photos to show you where we've recently been at in that mining process. We wash this coal through the Cook Colliery, and it goes out of the Gladstone port, RG Tanner. Steady state for us here is about 1 million tonnes a year, thereabouts, and a total 14 million tonne resource. And it's a very high quality, low volatile, ultra low volatile PCI coal, which goes into the steel industry. So it's an important steel making coal. So this picture just demonstrates where we are, or where we were a couple of weeks ago, in terms of mining down the pit. So basically the Bluff Mine started with a single pit, and we've now sort of moved it into a more of a sustainable terrace mine, and you'll see that shortly. But we're down the pit on the coal, and we're mining this as we speak. The next slide shows you can see up on the upper benches there, we've now progressed the mine to push it further south, which is a logical along strike way for it to go. So it's a terrace mine. It'll now sort of move, those two faces will move in parallel. And in the meantime, we've been mining in what we call stage 3, which is further into the page there. We've been mining overburden in advance for what we call swimming pools, basically some sort of water storage. Up until we reopened this mine, it was full of water. We've had a wet, dry season, and we're heading into possibly a wet season. So we've now, with having the two mining faces open and then the water storage available, we've made that much more robust to get through the wet season. And this is our first coal being shipped at RG Tanner in June of this year. I'll turn now to Burton, the Burton complex. This is a fantastic set of assets for us. We've acquired these, I think, at the right time in the cycle. We've got a substantial resource there, as you can see, between the various pits. I would say that when we acquired these, we wrote the resource down quite significantly because coal prices were down, and we wanted to make sure that we could make money out of these pits, rain, hail or shine. And now with coal prices looking reasonably sustained, we're just re-looking at that. And there's a lot more coal in this area. We've said that in our recent quarterly report. So part of the capital raising we did recently is going towards growth opportunities within our own portfolio. Lenton, for instance, was more than halved when we acquired it in terms of resource, and we're re-looking at all those mine plans now and looking at how can we expand production and extend mine life out of what are really some very good assets. We also picked up all the infrastructure here as part of the Burton acquisition. Well north of 300 million, probably north of 450 million in today's market, to replace this wash plant, rail loop, offices, workshops, and haul road, etc. So look, this has been a fantastic acquisition for us, and we're very excited about growing our footprint on the back of this. It's also, it forms our hub for our northern Burton complex, and we plan to feed through Hillalong coal and other assets in the region over time. But being in control of our own infrastructure here, I can't stress enough how important that is to keep our cost base down and give us certainty on getting to market. So within that complex, Broadmeadow East is the first first pit we've got, which we've opened up now. And we're well into that now. I'll show you some photos of that. Steady state production there, around 1 million tonnes a year. We've got Boomer in there, the old downer, doing the contracting work for us. Once again, I'm very proud of the team. We had the environmental authority granted only in March, mobilised in May, and despite the wet first coal in July, and we've railed our first coal to port already, as I said. This is the pit recently, and I think if you only got to go back 3 months or so, and prior to this, and this was a paddock basically, so it's been a very rapid startup, and you can see it's a very easy coal mining operation. It's spitting out coal at the moment, all high quality metallurgical and thermal coal. Beyond that, we move to Burton Lenton, which is the main game here. So Broadmeadow East is the first pit we kick off with. We'll get 5, 6 or maybe more years out of that. But we're kicking off Burton Lenton pits, the Burton ones in particular, around year end, early into next year. And that's really going to sort of supercharge our production as we get those unmined pits going. There's also a lot of other, as I said, existing pits and things we can take further down dip, and we can take along strike that we're looking at the moment. So we think there's a lot more coal to come out of this complex. And we'll be saying more about that over coming months. Production target out of this, around 3.5, 4.5 million tonnes of ROM, and a very big resource. This is the wash plant on the left that we're now well and truly into in terms of refurbishing. We've sent away most of the critical items for refurbishment, pumps, screens, etc. And the TLO train loadout on the right-hand side at Malawa. Again, we've got valves have come back and already gone into place. This is all coming together. Timing of this, the Burton wash plant, we're looking to get going very early next year. We've got wash capacity through Carbra Downs, Fitzroy up until the end of the year, and then we're looking to sub into this wash plant thereafter. Malawa train load out, we're aiming to get trains going on that later this month. Great set of infrastructure. We're also doing some screening, crushing and screening. So we're doing some bypass coal, and this thermal market that allows us to get a very good price for that, effectively 100% yield coal that's coming out of this Broadmeadow East pit. Here's the mess hall, 270 out of our 350 rooms we've now refurbished in the camp, and we can do, there was up to 660 rooms in this facility, so we've got plenty of space to grow. So look, in summary, this is our snapshot of our project pipeline. 2 mines now in production, Broadmeadow East and Bluff. Burton, which forms the biggest part of that Burton complex, will be coming in, as I say, sort of very early next year. And Lenton follows behind that. So that's the only one of those in that complex. We need a final approval, federal EPBC approval. The rest of it's fully approved, state and federal. Isaac River, we're working through our final approvals there. We expect that to be in place next year, and that will get into production shortly thereafter. And then behind that, Hillalong will come through the Burton complex, and our other assets will follow behind that. We are still, I should say, acquisitive, and obviously coal prices up. People are kind of getting more fancy expectations on pricing of assets, but we'll be very disciplined in looking to grow this business. So this sort of all boils down to our production targets this financial year, looking at 2 million tonnes of ROM and about 5 thereafter. So we're looking to well and truly beat over time our 5 million tonne ROM target. Just briefly on the prices, I guess we've had extremely high prices. As I said, coking coal, you can see on the left in the blue there, spiked up to $400 odd in September of last year, well before the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And then post that, we're up in the $600 US mark. So absolutely extraordinary prices. And with the Aussie dollar down at sort of mid-60s, incredible tailwinds for producers coming out of Australia. Met coal's come off a bit, thermal's come up on the back of a pretty substantial energy crisis in Europe in particular, and we're just seeing those starting to come back together again now. Thermal back at around 350 or so US, and met coming back up, I think last around 316 or so US as well. So that gap over time presumably will close as met coal is a higher value asset. Thank you for your time.